The Dunn's Tribunal finds that Charlie Haughey was paid $1.3 million by Ben Dunn. China takes control of Hong Kong as a century and a half of British rule comes to an end, and demands for full disclosure of nuclear dumping in the Irish Sea. Hello and welcome to 6-1. Also on the programme this evening, RTE investigating the weekend murder at a Dublin bookmakers say it had all the hallmarks of a gangland killing.
A fresh investigation into the Hillsborough disaster has been ordered after a long campaign by the families of the 96 people who died. And Mike Tyson could face criminal charges for biting off part of Evander Holyfield's ear during their fight.
But first, former Taoiseach Charles Haughey is to testify before the Dunn's Payments to Politicians Tribunal, his legal team said today. Counsel for Mr Haughey accepted as a matter of probability that £1.3 million was paid into accounts controlled by accountant Des Traynor for Mr Haughey, but said Mr Haughey did not know that this money came from Ben Dunn. Earlier, counsel for the tribunal outlined evidence which is to be presented, which they believe proves that Mr Haughey obtained the use and benefit of the money at the centre of the investigation.
As the tribunal resumed this morning after a 2-month adjournment, it was expected that the day would be taken up with legal argument about whether or not Ben Dunn's solicitor Noel Smith would give evidence about a number of conversations with Charles Haughey. But it quickly became obvious that Mr Smith's evidence would not prove as crucial as first thought. During the adjournment, the tribunal's legal team has been continuing investigations in London and Dublin, and as senior counsel Dennis McCullough outlined the evidence they would present, it became clear that they believed they had proof linking Mr Haughey to the payments from Ben Dunn. Mr McCullough said the money paid by Ben Dunn ended up in an account in the Dublin bank Guinness and Mahon under the control of Mr Haughey's accountant, the late Des Traynor. This account also contained money belonging to other individuals, with a total of between £30 and £40 million involved. Money from this account was paid by Des Traynor to Paul Carthy, an accountant with the firm Haughey Boland, who used it to pay expenses and bills for Mr Haughey. Mr McCullough said it was now clear to the tribunal team that Mr Haughey obtained the use and benefit of monies held in accounts under the management of Des Traynor. In particular, Mr McCullough outlined evidence that would be presented concerning the first payment made by Ben Dunn, over £180,000 sterling transferred from a Dunn Stores account in Bangor to a bank account in London. He said it would be shown that this money was transferred to the account of a company called Amiens Investment, which was set up by Des Traynor. £105,000 of this money was used to pay off a loan which Mr Haughey had with the ACC Bank, and that bank sent a letter of acknowledgement to Mr Haughey at his request. Ian McGonigal, counsel for Mr Haughey, said his client would furnish documents to the tribunal by next Friday. These would acknowledge as a matter of probability that £1.3 million was paid into accounts managed by Des Traynor for Mr Haughey, but that they would show that he was not aware that the money had been paid by Ben Dunn. Mr McGonigal also said that it was not the case that Mr Haughey personally received 3 cheques made out in fictitious names from Mr Dunn. He said Mr Haughey would be available to give evidence to the tribunal, although this is not expected to take place for a couple of weeks. The examination of banking evidence relating to Mr Haughey will resume on Monday. The tribunal has now adjourned until Wednesday, when evidence will be taken from former Minister Michael Lowry about his business relationship with Mr